pentagram. When we draw that 5-pointed star, that's the pentagram. The polygon that fits in the circle is called a pentagon, but we're interested in where these diagonals cross, right? So where this distance intersects with that distance, this critical point here, this intersection point, has the relationship of the golden mean. So if this distance was 1 unit, then this distance here is 1.618. There's also a second occurrence of the golden mean. When we draw the star within the star, if I'm going to draw another pentagram within the larger pentagram, this distance here is 1.618 distance of that. So the star within the star within the star keeps reducing at the rate of the golden mean factor, 1.618. So what that means is that we've suddenly found a wavelength that nature uses quite efficiently to go down into the small picture, into the shortwave, but also we can keep increasing that star by the same factor of 1.618 and expand out into the galaxy. We suspect we found a ratio or wavelength that knows how to travel through the dimensions without self-destructing. And the only way something can do that is that it must be recursive. It must be self-similar. It's the same shape, same ratio that doesn't get destroyed. In a sense, when you have a child, that child is a self-similar reproduction of who you are, and it's taking your DNA into the future so that you can survive. We're talking about surviving and destructibility. So through love, your essence is expanded through your children and grandchildren and so on to infinity. But mathematically, that's expressed biologically by this critical wavelength point called 0.618 ratio. So the ultimate symbol of the divine proportion is the pentacle, and you can see why it's been kind of not demonized, but it's been given bad press by being associated to the witch hunt and to the witches, because really what they've done over the centuries is to put you in fear to the shape of the symbol, because the pentagram holds the memory of your DNA ratio, which is 0.618 ratio, which I'm going to show you some more slides of. So by putting fear into sacred symbol, what happens is that you can't access the memory of who you are. So the pentacle, the swastika, the Star of David, and many, many symbols have been tarnished. And what we're leading up to basically is that even the golden mean spiral has been tarnished, because when you understand what the three-dimensional view is of the two-dimensional nautilus shell, it's literally a ram's horn, which is what was put on the devil card. So what I'm leading up to is I'm just giving you the information about the shapes and the numbers, and then we'll realize how deep this subject really is. Here's a rose window from France, and you can see that the pentacle was actually a very amazing symbol for the symbol of the crucifixion. So the 5-pointed star is basically a very, very powerful Christian symbol, but what happened was over the centuries it became associated to the witch hunt. You can appreciate that all the mathematics of these temples were glorifications of Jesus, that the world's knowledge was kept alive in stone. So these rose windows are powerful reminders that these are sacred symbols that are reminiscent of the Lord. The one below it here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-petaled. So often when you see the 6-petaled flower in the rose windows, you can, if you look closely at the details, it's sort of explaining the 6 days of creation. So the 6-pointed star was about creation, the 5-pointed star was about Jesus' crucifixion. What's interesting too is that not just on planet Earth, but when we look beyond the Earth into the solar system, we would like to know also that the Fibonacci sequence is found in the distances of the planets from the Sun. If you were to divide the orbit of the Earth, 365, by the orbit of Venus, which is 225 days, you would end up with a ratio called 1.618 exactly. So even the planets are mimicking this essential ratio. What we have here on the screen is we have the path of Venus. As it goes around the Sun, it takes 13 years in Venus's time, but it's actually 8 years on Earth. So every 8 years, we end up with this pentacle. So this is the path of a planet around the Sun, which creates the pentacle, is the 5, takes 8 years on Earth, and takes 13 Venus years. So the 5, 8, and the 13, which are the Fibonacci numbers, depict exactly the memory of what the planet Venus is doing in relationship to Earth and the Sun. This diagram, by the way, is taken from, it's actually the front cover of a beautiful book called A Little Book of Coincidences by John Martineau, and it's one of the most exquisite books that I know. There is a series of about 5 books on sacred geometry, and taken from another book relating to A Little Book of Coincidences is just a book called Sacred Geometry, and there's some exquisite pictures of what sound looks like. Imagine if we could see what sound actually looks like, the form or the shape of sound. So apparently the sound of what we call the perfect fifth, the musical fifth ratio, shows this beautiful shape in 3-dimensional view. So this is the sound of the fifth in music, which is very much related to the phi ratio because of its 5-ness. There's another branch of science coming fresh into schools now. It's called cymatics, which is the ability to see sounds. The future in sound and geometry is to be able to see the shapes of sound. We've done a lot of work with chanting the sounds of the chakras, like when we chant the sound of the heart chakra, it has a specific frequency and it's an ah. When you feel love, you feel that sound of ah. But if you were to measure that sound as a frequency and to see how that sound vibrates on a plate of glass with lots of fine sand particles, the sand particles magically in front of your eyes would form the shape of the Star of David. So the 6-pointed Star of David is actually the sound of one of the chakras, which is the heart chakra, which is the ah sound. So shape and sound relate to frequency, vibration. We would also like to know that in the invisible world of exoskeletons and starfishes and plankton, that these shapes of pentacles and 6-pointed stars are actually exist in the marine world or the biological world. And we can see here that we have some exquisite shapes of extinct starfishes called blastoidea. And you can see this pentacle form exist in here, in there, this beautiful shape there. We have it happening up here as well. So this is just to confirm to us that this is not our imagination, that nature prefers this optimum shape called the pentacle. These photographs that I'm showing you now are taken from a beautiful book called Art Forms in Nature by Haeckel, H-A-E-C-K-E-L. And it was a body of work done over 100 years ago on the expeditions when they first came to Australia. And he did these beautiful drawings of single-celled radiolaria, which I'm going to show you more of. This particular one here is showing you more species of the starfish here, the pentacle starfish there. There's another form. And actually this one in the center here is quite an exquisite shape of a starfish as well. It's just to show you the diversity that nature employs. Here's some more starfishes, as you can see, just exquisite shapes again. 1, 2, 3, 4. So what we're leading up to now is we've defined the incredible nature of the pentacle. What we're leading now to is we want to look at the Fibonacci numbers and see how they create this shape of the nautilus shell. The spiral is often sort of in the shape of the skull. If you look at the shape of your skull as it curves right back, it forms this exquisite nautilus shell shape. We're going to look at each number of the Fibonacci sequence as actual a square shape. We're going to look at the Fibonacci in a two-dimensional shape, which is obviously the spiral, but we need to understand how we can use these numbers as square shapes to compact and compress all the shapes together. So I'll do this on the whiteboard. We are here to transform the numbers of the Fibonacci sequence 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, but to view them now as squares, because later on we're going to view them as cubes. But right now, let's just see what pattern we get when we compress, compact efficiently all these squares so they form one matrix. So I'm going to start off with a 13 by 13 square. I'm going to descend down with the next Fibonacci number 8, 5, 3, 2, 1. Then I say, what's the next size, which is 8 by 8. I'm going to draw an 8 by 8 square. These are two-dimensional squares. Then I'm going to find the next square, which is a 5 by 5. And then I keep finding the next smaller square. Subdivision of the squares are just getting smaller and smaller. So this is 3 by 3. Then I do another square. So that's 2 by 2. And then we can just keep on going and going. But we find that we can keep going down, down, down into the small wave, right down into the atom. But we're not actually sure where they're all going around to. We're not actually sure. So let us get another map. I'm going to get another colour. And I'm going to put my compass here and open up the compass to this 13 units. So I'm going to draw an arc that goes from this point to that point. And then we're going to put our compass point here, and I'm going to draw a smaller arc. So each arc is reducing at the rate of 0.618, as you realise, as we're going from a 13 arc, an 8 arc. And now I'm going to put my compass here, and I'm going to draw another arc on the 5 by 5. And I'm going to put my compass here, and I'm going to draw another arc. And I'm going to keep getting smaller and smaller right down into the world of the atom. We could literally go forever. This is the mathematics of infinity. But we want to be very precise now. So the ancients worked out that there was a very critical 32 degree tilt that allowed us to go into this mathematics, vortex mathematics of infinity. So I'm going to draw in another colour the guidelines that I need, like snap lines, to show where's the centre of this vortex that I'm whirling around. So what they did was they drew the two main axes from this point here. They went right through to that point. And then notice that that's a golden rectangle. And when I've drawn the big square here, notice also that this shape is a golden rectangle. Every time I draw a square, like when I draw a square here, this shape becomes a golden rectangle. So now I'm going to draw the main axis of this golden rectangle, which is from this corner here to the other corner. So straight away I found my center point here, and this, I believe, is the 32 degree tilt angle that is the same as the chin angle of the Sphinx. It's tilted at a 32 degree tilt angle, which is similar in the next project that I show you with sacred geometry. We're going to look at when we take a cube and tilt it at 32 degrees 5 times, we go into the 4th dimension. We go from cube into dodecahedron, which is what Pythagoras was excited about. So just to let you know that these axes are at a very important tilt angle. Now that I know where my center point is, I understand that as I travel around from square to square, as the squares get smaller, I'm literally forever always going around this mystical point. I don't know where I go. We suspect that we go into some kind of wormhole. And we can travel interdimensionally through that point, into the small world or to the large world. It's the key to time travel. It's probably one reason why we don't know about golden mean, magic squares, Vedic mathematics, because this is part of your ascension process. It was hidden, it has been hidden from us, but it's there in nature all the time. And that's the beauty of this mathematics, that if we can't find this in nature, then it has no reality. And because this is the mathematics of the bones in your ear, the cochlea is also this spiral. This is like an antenna that picks up the waves so that it can focus vibration into the center. You see it in snail shells, you see it everywhere. This is also the shape of the galaxies as they're being born. And the reason why I'm showing you these two diagrams side by side is that this represents the feminine form of 1.618. This pentacle here, the star within the star within the star, is the masculine. But they're basically saying the same thing. Feminine, masculine. What I'd like to teach you now, before we get onto the spiral, is how do we construct that golden rectangle perfectly. So what we do is we need to start off with a perfect square, and we need a compass and a ruler. So if we look at this diagram here, we can see that we've got a perfect square, A, B, C, D. And what we need to do is we need to bisect that square in half. And I'm going to put my compass point at the midpoint of AB, which is E. And as soon as you put your compass from here to this point C, which is the diagonal of half the square, you just merely bring this arc around. Wherever this arc hits this extrapolated line at point F, that gives you the golden rectangle. So it's just a bit of work with the compass, and you can create your perfect rectangle to create the perfect spiral. So we've just found one eye of the golden mean spiral where we put those two intersecting diagonals, but really within the one golden rectangle there's 4 eyes or centers of the golden mean spiral. So in this diagram here, we drew this rectangle and we found that there was a spiral that went around and around forever around this point. But you could start the spiral, say from here, and end up with another eye there. You could start from this point here and get a spiral to here, or you could start from there and get another one. So really, there's 4 points. So in your business cards or ground plans for temple structure, you could use those 4 points as important, vital points to create your geometry for the ground floor of your house, or brochures, or whatever you're working with. So we can see now that this golden mean spiral isn't something that we've created. It's actually the truth of nature. This spiral is seen as the radiograph of the common nautilus shell that we know, Nautilus pompilius. And you can see that just the aesthetic pleasing proportions of each arc here. As the nautilus shell grows, each chamber seems to be increasing at the golden mean ratio. If you look very closely, there's these little nodes or arcs on these little lines here. These points here, it seems to be like a little tube inside the shell, but the distance from there to there seems to be in the golden mean, that this placement of where the tube is, I think it allows for the shell to float quite well. You see the nautilus shell bobbing up and down on the beach, but the more you study the internal structure of the nautilus shell, the more it resonates to this ratio. You can see here that 25 years ago, when I was interested in sacred geometry, my first drawings were all based on rolling wheels across the line, the evolute of a circle, and it creates this beautiful spiral. Inside the spiral are other entities that are diminishing in size. So these are from my very early manuscripts. It's just an indication that I've always been fascinated by the meaning of this spiral. What I would like to lead on to now is to take this one golden mean spiral, and we're going to start rotating that spiral in space. So we're wanting now to have a look at the three-dimensional view of many, many spirals as it's moving through space. Here's a diagram taken from Dan Winter's book on the golden mean spiral, where as we spiral around continuously, it seems to suggest a cup within a cup within a cup. So this is the three-dimensional view, which has a kind of an affinity with what DNA is about. Here's another view of the same spiral done many, many times. The one shape viewed three-dimensionally. Looks like cups within cups within cups. We're looking at the same pattern again, but this time we're looking at this three-dimensional spiral from a top-down view. We're looking at the top of it, and it's quite interesting that we have the effect of it looking like some kind of cobra, that serpentine view of when a snake's just about to bite, it raises its head back and it's just about to send this vast force of energy out. So there's a critical energy when it's poised, and that's quite a good definition of the golden mean, this sort of like snake-like shape at the center here. It's where all the energy is concentrated, right here in the center. So here we have the golden mean spiral. There's the golden mean spiral, but as we turn it around from this point, it looks like this. Can you see the snake-like shape there? So, and this shape is wrapped around many, many times. So this center point here is actually right there. So what I would like to do now is take you back to the whiteboard and show you a bit more clearly what I'm trying to get at, is that we want to see the three-dimensional view of this spiral. So rather than seeing this 13 by 13 square, what I would like you to visualize now is to look at this as a 13 by 13 by 13 three-dimensional spiral. What we're leading up to is trying to look at the compression of the spiral in 3D, all the cubes nesting in one coherent shape. So I want you to have a look at this shape here. Here's the logarithmic spiral that we drew in 2 dimensions down the bottom here. And I want you to now to visualize each square is a cube. So you can see a cube here, then there's a cube, a cube, a cube, and it's all in perfect alignment coming down to the original spiral. And then we're going to draw arcs, three-dimensional arcs through each cube. So let's go back to the whiteboard, and basically what we're doing is that each square that you see here can now be visualized as a three-dimensional cube. So this is 13 by 13 by 13 cube, cube, smaller cube, 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 and they keep getting smaller and smaller. And we're going to draw three-dimensional arcs going through. So I'd like you to visualize now what would that shape be to you? What would it look like? Is there anything in nature that would show you the solution to nature's dilemma here? How to perfectly compress energy so that it's always forever in a movement, so it's always flowing. It doesn't self-destruct, it's self-similar. So there appears to be really one solution to the ability to contain space proportionately, and it seems to be found obviously in nature again. It's in the seashell. So if you look at this beautiful diagram here, we see the long wave as it's twisting around right down into a focal point here in the center. This to me is perhaps one of the best symbols of the three-dimensional golden mean spiral. And it also suggests other shapes in nature as well. Are you familiar with the shape of the ram's horn, for example? It's very closely similar to the seashell shape here. So what you're looking at here is actually a fresh live ram's horn, and it's showing you this beautiful relationship of the long wave going right down into the short wave, which is at the tip of the horn there. This is nature's perfect expression of solving compression. So here I have 2 ram's horns, and you can see now why the sacred symbol of the ram's horn over the centuries has become demonized. So everything that's sacred to me, unfortunately, has been enveloped in a veil of fear. Most of you are familiar with the tarot cards, and there's one card known as the Devil card, and if you look closely at the Devil card, which is number 15, you'll see that we have this demon whose sacred symbols, unfortunately, are the two most amazing symbols that we've just covered through. You can see that, firstly, here's the pentacle that's been reversed. It's like taking a Christian cross, which means life and light, and by reversing it, it means anti-life or anti-Christ. So a symbol will only mean what we program it to mean. Whatever the mass consciousness agrees on or consents to what a symbol means, that's basically what it's going to mean, right? But look closely at the two spirals coming out of the devil's skull. We've got the ram's horns, those two golden mean spirals. They're kind of elongated here. But basically the connotation is that horns and stars are devilish. So don't you think that's quite bizarre that we've bought into that, and we're here at this point in time to pour light into these symbols and to reclaim the original divine blueprint meaning of what these symbols were. When we look at magic squares, we realize that the magic square of 6 by 6 also creates a very powerful symbol called the swastika. Now if I was to add up all the numbers from 1 to 2 to 3 up to 6 squared, which is 36, we would have 36 numbers. It all adds up to 666. When I join the pattern from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, and I rotate that pattern 4 times, I end up with a swastika. So the swastika has got a lot to do with the vibration of 6. Yet the original swastika at the time of Buddha for thousands of years was always a symbol of peace. But only in the last, 60 years has suddenly this amazing ancient symbol of peace, called the swastika, which was adored and still is, has been demonized to become a symbol of Hitler. So you can see how in the last decades, suddenly this sacred symbol is evil, you know. A lot of teachers who have a deep esoteric understanding of all this knowledge, they also claim that when you want to travel from one galaxy to the other, you need to go through the eye of the sun. Now, according to the Tree of Life, the Jewish Kabbalistic understanding of the cosmos, the magic square of 6 by 6 was also the symbol of the sun. It was the center of the Tree of Life. If you looked at the body as 10 spheres, there was the heart here was number 6, whereas earth was number 10, heaven was number 1. So you can map the body in any way you want, but 6 has always been considered like the heart center, but it was the sun, symbol of the sun, whereas the other planes were relating to the body. So the teachers from old taught us that if you want to go intergalactic, you need to go through the eye of the sun. So if we went through the eye of the sun, we end up at the next port at Sirius. So this ability to travel was having an understanding of sacred symbol, that the symbol of the sun was the swastika, but we demonized the swastika so people would never enter that doorway. So the fear is like a monster that scares you not to go through that tunnel, not to remember, to stay limited. And our journey obviously is to become unlimited. We're here to conquer every single fear that we know. Whatever hang up you have, whatever you fear, unfortunately you create. Because the more we fear something, the more we think about it. So unfortunately life is quite bizarre and beautiful because everything we're afraid of, we create it by the power of our thought. So it's quite beautiful in a way. So that's why at this time in the universe now, everything that's been hidden is being exposed. Everything that's been kept secret. Because really the ultimate definition of the golden mean spiral is the ability for wavelengths to share from the long wave to the short wave as they travel through into infinity, so that it can always be self-similar, not die. So this is the beauty of the golden mean. The key word really is shareability. What I'm saying is that if someone comes to you and they can't share knowledge with you, it has no value. If someone hoards and possesses and they're not able to share, then then the energy in their spirals is kind of blocked. So you would keep yourself very discerningly away from that person. So work with people who have the ability not to hold, but they're willing to share, because the more we share, the more we also receive, because it's unlimited. It's quite beautiful.